great iron
let's play
stove
some
was the
damn
warmest room in the
chess.
house, and the morning room shared that heat through the wall. So this was the room where life began. When a woman went into labor, she did. These were called boarding, small to be a proper bedroom, too private to be storage. In New England, these were called boarding rooms, and the name tells you the first half of the story. This little room sat next to the kitchen for one reason above all others: warmth. Half of the story. This little room sat next to the kitchen for one reason above all others: warmth. The kitchen, with its constant fire and its great iron, one reason above all others: warmth. The kitchen, with its constant fire and its great iron stove, was the warmest room in the house, and the boarding room shared that heat through the wall. So this was the room where life began. When a woman went into labor, she did not climb the cold stairs to a freezing upstairs bedroom. She came to the warm little room beside the kitchen, close to the hot water, close to the fire, close to whoever was cooking and watching. Children were born there. But the boarding room had a second, heavier use, because warmth mattered just as much as the other
Suck my
when someone
motherfucking
fell
dick.
gravely ill, or grew too old and frail to manage the
You
stairs,
suck
they
my
were moved down
dick,
into that
bitch.
same warm room near the kitchen to be nursed,
You
and
suck
often
my
to
dick,
die.
bitch.
The boarding room was
Suck
the
my
room of first
motherfucking
breath and last
dick.
breath, placed beside the fire because in a house heated only by flame, the people most fragile, the newborn and the dying, needed to be where the heat was. One small
Suck my
room,
fucking
the whole
dick.
arc of a life, and almost nobody today knows what they are looking at. Behind
Suck
many
my
old
motherfucking
properties,
dick.
a second, smaller building stands apart
Now
from
fuck
the
up and
house
over this
with its
second
own
dick up
chimney.
one of
People
God
assume it
damn
was a
it.
shed or servants' quarters
You
or
stupid
maybe an old
motherfucker.
workshop. Often, it was the summer kitchen, and the reason it stood
Now
away
fuck
from
up
the
and
main
move this
house
phone down
comes
here.
down to two things people in the past feared every single day: heat and fire. Cooking in the 1800s meant feeding a roaring fire or a wood stove for
Suck my
hours.
dick, bitch.
In winter, that heat was a gift that warmed the whole home. But in the brutal humidity of an American July, that same fire turned the house into an oven, made the food spoil faster, and made the cook miserable. So families that could afford
fuck
it built
did
a
you-
separate
Probably took
kitchen,
my
a
goddamn
detached
bishop.
building used only in the hot months, where all that heat and smoke
God
stayed
damn
outside
it.
the main house entirely. There was a second reason,
Suck
and it
my
was deadly serious.
motherfucking dick.
Open fire cooking was the leading cause of house fires. By putting the kitchen in its own building, a grease fire or a stray spark would burn down the small summer kitchen and not the family home, with everyone asleep inside it. The summer kitchen was a heat shield and a fire break, a calculated bet against the two things most likely to kill you in your own home. We solved both problems with a thermostat and an oven door, and the building went obsolete. Back inside, at the bottom of the main staircase,
God
the post
damn
that
it.
anchors the railing sometimes hides a tiny secret. Set into the top of that newel post, the big decorative post at the foot of the stairs, there is occasionally a small disc or button, often made of ivory, bone, or dark wood, inlaid right into the wood cap. This post at the foot of the stairs, there is occasionally a small disc or button, often made of ivory, bone, or dark wood, inlaid right into the wood cap. This is the mortgage button, and the story attached to it is one of the most charming in the American home, even if historians
Suck my
argue about
motherfucking
how
dick.
literally true it ever was. The tradition goes like this. When a family finally paid off the mortgage on their house, they held a small ceremony. The deed to the property, now fully theirs, was rolled up, and the document, or sometimes the burned remains of the mortgage paper, was sealed inside a hollow cavity carved into the top of the newel post. Then a button was set over the hole to seal it
Suck
shut
my
forever.
motherfucking
From that
dick.
day on, every time a member of the family came down the stairs and rested a hand on that post, they touched the button and remembered that the house was theirs, free and clear, owned outright. The newel post became a monument to the single proudest financial moment a family could have. Whether every button truly hides a deed or whether the story grew taller over time, the meaning is real. People built a
Suck my
quiet ritual of
motherfucking
ownership into the wood of the staircase,
Suck my
a
motherfucking
private
dick.
celebration you walk past a dozen times a day. Most newel posts today are just posts. A few are tiny vaults of pride. Now, in the oldest colonial homes, especially across New England, the windows hold another strange secret. Built into the thick window frames, hidden inside the wall when not in use, there are sometimes solid wooden
Suck my
panels that
fucking
slide
dick.
out sideways to cover the glass from the inside. These are Indian shutters, sometimes called sliding shutters, and the
Suck
dramatic
my
version of the
motherfucking
story
dick.
is right there in the name. In the colonial frontier era, the legend says, settlers feared raids, and glass windows were terrifyingly fragile points of attack. So they built heavy interior shutters that could be yanked out of the wall in an instant to barricade the window against arrows, against muskets, against intruders, sealing the family inside a wooden box. There is real debate about how much of that defensive story holds up, and many historians think the danger was exaggerated over the centuries. But here is what is genuinely clever about these shutters, defense or not. They slide into a hollow pocket inside the wall and vanish completely when open, which means they never take up room and never bang in the wind like exterior shutters. And in a drafty colonial house heated by a single fireplace, pulling those solid wooden panels across the cold glass at night did something that mattered far more often than fighting off a raid. It insulated the room, it blocked the brutal heat loss through thin colonial glass, and held precious warmth inside. Whether they were built for arrows or for January, the people who used them every winter knew exactly what they were. We replaced them with curtains and forgot they were ever there, folded inside the walls. By the front step of a fine old townhouse, set into the stone or the iron of the porch, there is sometimes a small blade or scraper, a little metal ridge, mounted at ankle height right by the door. To us, it is a baffling piece of metal that serves no purpose. To anyone living before paved roads, it was essential, and it tells you something grim about the world just outside that door. This is the boot scraper, and it existed because the streets of the old city were not the clean pavement we know. They were dirt, they were mud, and they were absolutely covered in the waste of the thousands of horses that powered every cart, carriage, and delivery in the city. A person walking even a short distance arrived at the front door with boots caked in mud and manure. You could not track that to a respectable home, across the rugs, into the parlor that took so much effort to keep pristine. So the boot scraper sat at the threshold as the last line of defense, a blade to drag your soles across and knock the filth of the street off before you ever stepped inside. The humble boot scraper is a tiny iron monument to a vanished world. A world where the ground itself was a hazard, where the smell of the street followed you indoors unless you stopped and scraped. The cars came, the streets were paved, and the boots came clean. The scraper stayed bolted to the porch, a relic nobody remembers using. Now, on the upper floors and sides of homes from the early 1900s, there's a feature that confuses people the most, because it looks like an unfinished room or a porch in the wrong place. The bedroom, fully built, but with most of its outer walls made of screens instead of solid wall. Open to the night air, exposed to the weather, with a real bed inside. This is the sleeping porch, and it's existence that comes from one of the most haunting chapters in medical history. For decades, the leading killer in America was tuberculosis, a relentless lung disease with no cure, and the only treatment doctors could offer was fresh air. Constant, cold, open, fresh air around the clock. Doctors became convinced that stale indoor air bred sickness, and that the cure for weak lungs was to breathe the open night, even in winter. Sanatoriums were built around the idea. Whole hospitals with patients wheeled out onto freezing porches to sleep under the stars in the belief that the air itself would heal them. And ordinary families followed the advice into their own homes. They built sleeping porches onto the side of the house, so the whole family could sleep outdoors through the warm months, and the sickly could sleep out there year-round, breathing the night air that was supposed to save them. The sleeping porch was part medicine, part summer relief in the years before air conditioning, made the indoors bearable. When antibiotics finally beat tuberculosis, and the air conditioner cooled the bedroom, the reason for the sleeping porch evaporated. The strange screened room remained, a monument to a time when people believed the night air itself could pull you back from death. In the ground, beneath the old house, sits a feature that was a matter of pure survival. A small, cool, dark room, dug into the earth, either under the house or as its own mound out in the yard, lined with stone and earth, holding nothing but shelves, the root cellar. Today, it looks like a creepy basement nobody uses. For most of human history, it was the difference between eating through the winter and starving. There was no refrigerator. There was no grocery store stocked year-round. When the harvest came in, a family had to make months of food last through a frozen winter with no fresh supply coming. The root cellar solved that. Dug into the ground, it used the constant, stable temperature of the earth itself, cool but never freezing, to keep potatoes, apples, carrots, onions, cured meat, and jars of preserves edible for months. The earth was the refrigerator. A well-built root cellar held the entire winter's survival in its darkness, and a family's planning for the cold season was measured by how full those shelves were when the first frost hit. We plugged in a humming white box in the kitchen, and the root cellar lost its job overnight. But for the people who dug them, that hole in the ground was as essential as the roof over their heads. There is one more feature that quietly reveals the harshest truth about how these old houses work, and it hides in the layout itself. In larger old homes, there is frequently a second staircase. Narrow, plain, steep, tucked at the back of the house near the kitchen, completely separate from the grand front staircase with its carved railing and its mortgage button. People assume it was just convenience, an extra way up. It was not about convenience. It was about class, built into the bones of the house. That staircase was the servant staircase.
He took a ride on a
In a
stupid
household
machine.
with hired help, the entire design of the home was arranged so that the people doing the work could move through the house, from the basement kitchen to the upstairs bedrooms, carrying coal and laundry and meals, without ever being seen by the family or their guests. The servants had their own narrow stairs, their own back hallways, their own hidden routes threading through the walls of the home. The grand front staircase was a stage for the family to descend in their finest clothes. The back staircase was a hidden vein that kept the labor of the house invisible. Two staircases meant two classes of human being moving through the same building on purpose, never crossing paths. The architecture itself enforced who was meant to be seen and who was meant to disappear. We knocked out those back stairs in renovation after renovation, never realizing we were erasing the floor plan of an entire social order. And even the walls of an old house carry a forgotten instruction. Along the upper part of the wall, in a fine old room, about a foot below the ceiling, a thin strip of molding circles the entire room. People paint over it, assuming it is decoration. It is the picture rail, and it solved a real problem. The walls of these homes were plaster, applied wet over wooden lath, and plaster is brittle. Drive a nail into a plaster wall to hang a heavy framed painting, and the whole patch can crack and crumble. So instead of nailing into the wall at all, that rail was mounted near the ceiling where the wall was strongest, and pictures hung from hooks and wires down from the rail. The art floated on the wall without a single hole punched into the plaster, and the height of every frame could be adjusted just by sliding the hook along the rail. We invented drywall, and the picture rail became a mystery strip people paint over without a thought. So here is the whole house now, with the code finally cracked. The two front doors, the dead parlor, the coffin corner that never held a coffin, the witch window that never feared a witch, the blue ceiling, the transom, the boarding room, the summer kitchen, the mortgage button, the sliding shutters, the boot scraper, the sleeping porch, the root cellar, the servant stairs, the picture rail. None of it is random. None of it is haunted. Every strange feature is a frozen answer to a question the modern world no longer asks. How do we survive the winter without a fridge? How do we cool the bedroom without electricity? How do we honor the dead without a funeral home? How do we show the town who we are? How do we keep the labor invisible? The house was a complete technology for living and dying, and it was written in a language everyone once spoke fluently. And this is the part worth sitting with, because it explains why the myth spread so fast. The features did not disappear. The houses are still standing all around us, doors and windows and niches intact. What disappeared was the knowledge. In roughly one generation, refrigeration, electricity, air conditioning, antibiotics, and the funeral industry erased the problems these features solved, and so the features stopped meaning anything. People kept living in the houses, but they had forgotten how to read them. And a human mind hates a feature with no explanation, so it invents one. Coffins for the door, witches for the window, ghosts for the ceiling. The spooky stories are not really about the houses. They are about us, filling the silence where real history used to live, because a ghost is easier to remember than a flu pandemic and a buried mortgage. That is how the people who actually study this house
Stupid!
A preservationist, an architectural historian, someone who reads buildings for a living, does not start with the legend. They start with the boring question. What problem was this solving? In a world without modern technology, follow the heat, follow the daylight, follow the dirt and the fire and the fear of the cold, and the real answer almost always appears, quieter and smarter than the myth. The internet loves the haunted version because the haunted version gets shared. But the true version is better because the true version means your house is not a horror story. It is a survival manual, written by people who had to be a genius to make it through a single year alive. So the next time you stand in an old house and something catches your eye that should not be there, a door, a window, a strange little room, do not reach for the ghost. Ask what it was for. Ask what world built it. Because that house is still trying to tell you something. In a language we almost let die. And once you learn to listen, you will never walk through an old building the same way again. The walls have been talking the whole time. We just forgot how to hear them. And somewhere out there, that house with 2 front doors is still standing, both doors shut, still waiting for someone who finally knows which one was meant for the living.
Oh my fucking God. I see a way to dick up this motherfucking king. Bitch, suck my dick. Stupid motherfucker. I fucked his hole! I fucked this 1200 rating asshole. I stuck my dick in his butt and twisted like a slut. Suck my motherfucking slut. Suck my fucking dick. Now fuck up and move. Bitch, you suck my dick, bitch. Suck my motherfucking dick. Suck my fucking dick. Suck my dick, bitch. Suck my fucking dick. Suck my motherfucking dick, you motherfucking bitch. You stupid motherfucker. You stupid ass fucking bitch. I'm fixing to stick my dick up your butt. You better to a fucking castle, bitch. Suck my dick, bitch. God damn it. You suck my dick. Stupid motherfucking bitch. Suck my motherfucking dick.
Here. The only thing that has truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be a Christian nation.
6 in 10 Americans believe the founders built this country to be a Christian nation. Among Christians, it's nearly 7 in 10. You've heard it in your life, from pulpits, from politicians, from every corner of the internet. America was founded as a Christian nation.
As a clashing symbols nation.
One problem. The founders are on record, in their own letters, in their own hand, in documents they signed into law.
God damn it.
And what they actually wrote would get them thrown out of most churches in America today. This is the story of the most important of them, the one they tried to erase.
Yeah, go ahead and take that fucking bishop.
A body
I'll put your black
disappears.
ass in checkmate.
No grave, no monument, no marker. The bones are pulled out of the ground in the dark, carried across an ocean, and then somewhere along the way, lost. To this day, nobody knows where they are. And this was not a nobody. This was one of the most important men in the
You better take
founding
that
of the
motherfucking
United
or I'm gonna
States.
stick my...
A man whose words helped launch the American
I
Revolution.
fucked his...
A man whose
Hold!
words George
Dumbass.
Washington read aloud
Fucking
to his
slut,
freezing
China.
army. A man to whom
You
millions
slut-eyed
of
slut from
Americans
China!
fled their country without ever knowing his name. So, what did he do to earn
Come
a
on,
vanished
slut.
grave? Why did his own country decide to forget him?
Come on, you
Why
fucking
did the
slut.
churches want him erased?
Come on, slut.
It comes down to a single question. He asked out loud about Christianity and would not take it back. The kind of question that once it is asked in public cannot be unasked. His
Come
name
on, slut.
was Thomas Paine. On the 8th of June, 1809, in a rented room in Greenwich Village,
Come on, slut.
he died almost alone.
Come
He
on,
had no
slut.
money. Most of his friends had left him. The country he had helped invent had decided it was embarrassed by him. He had asked for one thing. He wanted to be buried in the Quaker cemetery, among the people who had raised him. But even the Quakers said no. They were afraid of what his grave would become. So 6 people carried him out to a field on his own farm and put him in the ground under a tree. 2 of the 6 were black men who walked 25 miles from New York City to stand at the grave of the man who had written against slavery when it was unfashionable to do so. They understood him better than the nation did. 10 years later, it got stranger. An Englishman named William Cobbett dug the body up in the
God
middle of
damn
the
it.
night. He wanted to carry the bones back to England
You
and
fucked
build
over
a
son of
great
a bitch.
monument, because he had decided this man deserved better than a farmer's field. The monument was never built. The bones sat in a trunk. They passed from hand to hand for decades.
Come on, you son of a
And
bitch.
then they disappeared. To this day, nobody knows where Thomas Paine is.
Who gives
Think
a good
about what it
goddamn?
takes to do that to a man. Not to argue with him, to erase him. To make sure that even his bones could not become a holy relics for admirers to venerate. So what did Thomas Paine do to earn that? He helped start the United States, and then he wrote a book that took the Bible apart. Here's the irony underneath the whole story. If Thomas Paine appeared in America today, many of the loudest voices insisting America is a Christian nation would call him an atheist, an enemy of the faith, a danger.
But I want to say something here. The only thing that has truly served as an anchor of the United States of America is that we have been, and by the grace of God, we always will be, a Christian nation.
Yet he is one of the men who built the country these patriots think they are
God damn
defending. Paine did something stranger to too. Sitting alone with a Bible and his own reason, he arrived at conclusions about that book that would not reach the universities for another 100 years. We will come back to that. First, we have to understand why a free country wanted his body to disappear.
Come on, you son of a bitch.
In January of 1776, the American colonies were not united, and most of them were not even sure they wanted to be independent. They were arguing about taxes and representation, not about leaving the empire. Then a pamphlet appeared, written anonymously by a felled corset maker and an ex-tax collector who had been in America for barely a year. It was called Common Sense. It argued, in language a farmer could read, that it was absurd for a continent to be ruled by an island, and that monarchy itself was a fraud dressed up in scripture. It sold in numbers that scaled to the population no American book has ever matched since. It did not just report the mood, it changed it. Within 6 months, the colonies declared independence. Later that same year, when Washington's army was collapsing and men were deserting in the cold, Paine wrote the first of a series of essays called The American Crisis. It opened with a line that Washington ordered read aloud to the troops before they crossed the Delaware to attack at Trenton. These are the times that try men's souls. Thomas Paine, The American Crisis, number 1, December 1776.
Suck my
the pamphlet
motherfucking
that made
dick.
independence thinkable, and the words that steadied the army when it was about to break, both came from the same pen. Whatever you want to call the founders, you cannot tell the story of 1776 without him. Here is the claim you have heard your whole life. America was founded as a Christian nation by Christian men on Christian principles. And the people who say it are usually picturing the founders as a kind of prayer circle in powdered wigs. There is something to that picture. Many Americans of the founding era were Christians. Christian language runs all through the speeches and the letters. There is no use in denying
Come on, you
it.
dick sucker.
But the leading
You
minds
stupid
of that
motherfucker.
generation were shaped by something called deism,
You
the
just fucked up,
belief in a
Chris.
creator known through
Cause you just
nature
fucked up.
and
Son
reason,
of a bitch.
rather than through scripture and miracle. Thomas Jefferson literally took a razor to his Bible and cut out the miracles. Benjamin Franklin
It's gonna be a
wrote
fucking
his
stalemate.
doubts about the divinity of Jesus just weeks before he died. And then there was Paine, who did not hint and did not hedge. He wrote the whole thing down and published it under his own name. The man whose words launched the revolution believed that the Bible was, in his words, the word of a demon. He proved his point using nothing but the text itself. Paine was born in England in 1737,
Almost sounds like he's
raised among
blaspheming the Holy
Quakers,
Spirit.
a sect that already
Now fuck up and all of this.
the inner
God
light
damn it.
over outward ritual. He failed at
God
nearly everything
fucking
before
damn
he
it.
was 40. Corset making, tax collecting, marriage, business. He met Benjamin Franklin in London, who gave him a letter of introduction, and he sailed to America to start over. He nearly died of fever on the voyage, and then almost immediately, he wrote the words that helped found a country. That is the man, not a scholar in a tower, a self-taught outsider
God
who
damn
read
it.
science for pleasure, loved astronomy, and trusted his own reason over any authority that told
God
him
fucking
to
damn it.
stop asking questions. Keep that in
God
mind,
bucket.
because it's the same instinct that produced everything that comes next. The easiest way to wave Penn
You stupid
away
motherfucker.
is to call him the one bitter outlier, the lone skeptic in a room
God
full
damn it.
of praying men.
God
But the
bucket. Damn
records
it.
do not support that. Several of the most important
God
people
bucket.
who built the United States held
You can
views
kiss that
about
motherfucking
Christianity
nut, you
that,
guys son of a bitch.
if they posted them under their own names today, would get them branded enemies of the faith by the very people who put them on coffee mugs. Bear in
Now
mind
fuck up and over
that for
that
the
son of a
next few
bitch.
minutes, everything you are about
Suck
to
my
hear
motherfucking dick.
is a direct quotation with a date and a source you can look up for yourself. No paraphrases, no internet memes. We will even show you the fakes at the end, so you know we are not using them. Before Paine ever wrote The Age of Reason, a different Revolutionary War hero got there first. Ethan Allen,
God
the
damn
man who
it.
captured Fort Ticonderoga, published what historians call the first
You
ancient
stupid
Christian book
motherfucker.
printed in America, a full decade before Paine. He called it Reason, the only oracle of man. I have generally been denominated a deist, the reality of which I never disputed. Being conscious I am no Christian, except mere infant baptism make me one.
The fuck?
A hero of the
Man,
revolution
I
declared
feel like take this
that
fucking queen.
he
I'm
was
fucked
no
up.
Christian. A decade before
Man, I'm
Paine
fucked up.
said a word. Then the man who wrote the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, did not merely doubt Christian doctrine.
God
In
fucking
private
damn it.
letters, he went after it with a sharpness that would end a career today. On the Trinity, no
God
man
damn it, I could
ever
have
had
fucked
a
up before.
distinct idea of the Trinity. It is the mere abracadabra of the Mountebanks, calling themselves the priests of Jesus. Thomas Jefferson to Francis Adrian Vanderkamp, 30 July
God
1816.
fucking damn it.
On the Apostle Paul, the man who wrote much of the New Testament, Jefferson penned this portrait. Paul was the great Corpheus, the first corrupter of the doctrines of Jesus. Thomas Jefferson to William Short, 13th April 1820. And on the virgin birth, Jefferson predicted it would one day be filed next to the myths of the Greeks and Romans. The day will come when the mystical generation of Jesus, by the Supreme Being as his Father in the womb of a virgin, will be classed with the fable of the generation of Minerva in the brain of Jupiter. Thomas Jefferson to John Adams, 11 April 1823. The man on the $2 bill took a razor to his own Bible and cut the miracles out. Like Paine, he kept his admiration for Jesus, the moral teacher, and threw out everything supernatural. He still called himself a Christian, but only in that stripped-down sense, which is almost word for word the distinction Paine drew. Benjamin Franklin was more careful, but weeks before he died, he said the quiet part in writing. Asked directly about Jesus, he answered, I have, with most of the present dissenters in England, some doubts as to his divinity. Benjamin Franklin to Ezra Stiles, 9th March, 1790. He admired the morals of Jesus, but thought the gospel narratives had picked up, in his words, various corrupting changes. John Adams, the second president, was a Unitarian who rejected the Trinity outright, and he lamented how the symbol of the cross had been abused by the men who ran the church. Knavish priests have added prostitutions of it that fill or might fill the blackest and bloodiest pages of human history. John Adams to Thomas Jefferson, 3rd September, 1816. We shall hear this voice again. James Madison, the man most responsible for the Constitution, kept his personal theology close to the vest. But on the marriage of church and state, he was blunt. During almost 15 centuries has the legal establishment of Christianity been on trial. What have been its fruits? More or less in all places, pride and indolence in the clergy, ignorance and servility in the laity, in both superstition, bigotry, and persecution. The piece of paper that closes the case is not a private letter or a personal opinion. It is law. In 1797,
God damn it.
the United States Senate ratified a treaty with Tripoli. Article 11 says, in plain English, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion,
God fucking
treaty
damn
of
it.
peace and friendship with Tripoli, Article 11, ratified unanimously by the U.S. Senate, 7th June, 1797, signed by President John Adams. The Senate passed it unanimously, without debate. The president who signed it into law was none other than John Adams. And in Washington, there is no Washington, quote, attacking Christianity. He was famously private about doctrine. He wrote about providence far more than about Christ, and he often left services before communion. His personal beliefs are a subject over which serious historians still differ. Now put it together. The man who wrote the Declaration called Paul a corrupter, and the virgin birth a fable.
God
The
damn
man
it.
most responsible for the Constitution
God
tore
fucking
into
damn it.
established Christianity. The president who signed the Treaty of Tripoli put his name to a sentence saying the country was not founded on the Christian religion. And a war hero published an anti-Christian book 10 years before Paine opened his mouth.
God damn it.
Paine, then, was not a lone heretic the founders would have run out of town. He was the loudest voice in a room full of men who, in private letters, and
Get that
sometimes in public
goddamn.
law,
God damn it.
were circling the same questions he was. The difference is that the others kept it in
God
correspondence,
fucking damn
or
it.
hedged, or held office
God
that required tactful silence.
God
Paine
fuck it.
published under his own name in a language a farmer could read,
God
and he
fuck
paid
it.
for it
God
with everything
fucking
he
damn it.
had. That is exactly why, of all of them, he is the one they worked hardest to erase.
God fuck it.
After America, Paine went to revolutionary France, got himself elected to the National Convention, and then got on the wrong side of the terror by arguing against executing the king. He thought killing a man for being a king was beneath a republic. For that mercy, the radicals turned on him. He knew arrest was coming. So in the last weeks of 1793, with the guillotine busy every day, he sat down and wrote the first part of The Age of Reason. He finished it, by his own account, with almost no time to spare. I had not finished it more than 6
God
hours
damn it.
in the state it has since appeared before a guard came about 3 in the morning with an order signed by the 2 committees of public safety and surety general for putting me in arrestation. Thomas Paine, preface to Part 2 of The Age of Reason. He was thrown into the Luxembourg prison. He nearly died there from illness and from a chalk mark on a door that was supposed to send him to the blade, and by luck or accident, did not.
God
The
damn it.
American minister, James Monroe, the future president, eventually got him out. But Paine was more dead than alive. And while he was still recovering, still expecting the end,
Now fuck up
He
and move
wrote
that
Part
fucking
2.
whore right here.
this matters because people imagine The Age of Reason as an angry book. It is not. It is the most sincere kind of book there is. It is what a man writes when he thinks he has run out of time,
God
and
damn
wants to
it.
leave behind what he truly
God damn it.
believes. Here's the thing: the pulpits never
Okay,
told
that's
their
fucking.
congregations.
Man, this is boring as fuck.
Paine was not an atheist. He opens the book with a statement of faith, not a sneer, a creed.
Man, this
I
is
believe
boring
in
as
one
fuck.
God, and no more. And I hope for happiness beyond this life. Thomas Paine, The Age of Reason, Part 1, Chapter 1. He believed in God. He believed in an afterlife. He believed religion was real and that it entailed moral duties, doing justice, loving mercy, and trying to make your fellow creatures happy. What he refused to believe was that any book handed down by any church could be the word of that God. My own mind is my own church. Thomas Paine, The Age of Reason, Part 1, Chapter 1. And he drew a distinction that is worth more than most modern arguments about belief. He said the sin is not doubting, the sin is pretending. Infidelity does not consist in believing or in disbelieving. It consists in professing to believe what he does not believe. Thomas Paine,
Suck
Age
my
of Reason,
fucking dick.
Part 1, Chapter 1.
God fucking damn
To
it.
Paine, the infidel was not the man who asked honest questions. The infidel was the priest who stood up and recited a faith he privately did not hold for the sake of his salary.
Amen.
He did not soften it. On the institution itself, every institution, he wrote one of the hardest sentences in the book. All national institutions of churches, whether Jewish, Christian, or Turkish, appear to me no other than human inventions set up to terrify and enslave mankind and monopolize power and profit. He names his own culture's church right alongside the others. He is not attacking somebody else's religion from the safety of his own. He is putting them all on the same table and asking the same question of each. Who told you this was the word of God? And why should I take their word for it? Paine argued that across all of human history, religions that wanted to control people leaned on 3 tools. Those 3 means are mystery, miracle, and prophecy.
God
The
damn it.
first 2 are incompatible with true religion, and the third ought always to be suspected. Mystery, because a thing you are forbidden to understand is a thing you cannot question. Miracle? Because a claimed event that violates nature can never be repeated or checked. And prophecy, the one we will be dealing with most extensively here. Because prophecy is the one on which Christianity rests its entire case. The argument has always been that Jesus fulfilled what the Hebrew prophets foretold. Payne says, before we even open those pages, that prophecy is the tool you should trust least of all. Then he draws a distinction so basic that, paradoxically, it never even occurs to most people. He asks what the word revelation can truly mean. And he says it can mean only something that communicates directly to a person. Fine. But the moment that person tells someone else, it stops being revelation. It is revelation to the first person only, and hearsay to every other.
Come on, you goddamn
And
motherfucker.
consequently, they are not obliged to believe it. So when Moses comes down and says, God spoke to him, the people at the bottom of the mountain do not have a revelation. They have Moses' word that he received a revelation. And we, 3,000 years later, do not even have Moses' word for it. What we have is but a story that says that somebody said that Moses said. It is, in Payne's phrase, hearsay upon hearsay. Every claim of Scripture is somebody telling you about somebody else's experience that you cannot check. Now here's an argument that almost nobody outside of scholarship has heard, and it is the kind of thing that stops a viewer cold. Payne
Goddamn
claimed
stalemate.
that the word prophet did not originally mean what we think it means. It did not mean a man who predicts the future, a prognosticator. It meant a poet, a musician, a performer. Payne writes, the word prophet, to which a later times have affixed a new idea, was the Bible word for poet, and the word prophesying meant the art of making poetry. He points to the text itself. The Bible describes people prophesying with harps and pipes and tambourines and cymbals. It describes Saul falling in with a band of prophets coming down a hill with instruments and joining the music. Payne's point is brutal in its plainness. You cannot prophesy the future with a tambourine, but you can absolutely make music with one. So when later generations went back into those poems, looking for predictions of a Messiah, they were reading a prediction industry into what had been a songbook.
I ain't taking this
The
shit.
whole machinery of prophetic fulfillment, he argues, was built on a mistranslation of a job title. In fact, the Hebrew word for priest, Kohen, is cognate with the Arabic kahin, which referred to inspired poets who delivered oracles in verse. Once you have that in your head, the rest becomes almost inevitable. If the prophets were poets, then every time a gospel writer says, so and so happened, so that the prophecy would be fulfilled, we should be able to go back, find the original poem, and read the lines around it. And that is exactly what Payne did, one by one. Of all the prophecies, one carries more weight than any other. When the Gospel of Matthew describes the birth of Jesus, he reaches back to the prophet Isaiah and quotes a line that has been echoed through every Christmas for 2,000 years. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. Isaiah 7:14, as quoted in Matthew 1:21. This is the foundation of the virgin birth. It is the proof text that Jesus' miraculous conception was foretold centuries in advance. Payne looks at it and says, in effect, all you have to do is read the chapter it comes from. Not the verse, the chapter. The year is roughly 735 years before Jesus. Ahaz, king of Judah, is terrified at the news that a pair of enemy kings of Israel and of Syria have sent their armies toward Jerusalem to overthrow him. Ahaz and his people are, in the text's words, shaking like trees in the wind. Into that panic walks the prophet Isaiah, and he brings a message. Do not be afraid. These two kings will fall. And to prove it, Isaiah offers Ahaz a guarantee. Therefore the Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son. For before the child shall know to refuse the evil and choose the good, the land which thou abhorrest shall be forsaken of both her kings. Isaiah 7:14 through 16 is quoted by Payne in an examination of the prophecies. Read the whole sign, not half of it. The sign is a child, and the timing of the sign is the key. Before that child is old enough to tell right from wrong, or perhaps food that he likes from food he does not like. So within a few years, two kings threatening Ahaz will be gone. That is the promise. A baby is going to be born, and before that baby is a toddler, your enemies will be destroyed.
God damn it.
Payne makes the logical point that ends the matter. A thing to be a sign must precede the thing signified. The sign of rain must be before the rain. If Isaiah is comforting a king who is about to be invaded this year, a baby born 700 years later is not a sign. It's a cruel joke. It would have been mockery and an insulting nonsense for Isaiah to have assured Ahaz that a child should be born 700 years after he was dead. And the text tells you whose child it actually was. In the very next chapter, Isaiah goes to the prophetess, his own wife. She conceives, and she bears a son. And Isaiah says plainly that he and his children are the signs. The child of Isaiah, chapter 7, is Isaiah's own child, born in Isaiah's own lifetime, as a sign about a war in Isaiah's own time. Then there's the word itself, virgin. The entire miracle depends on it. And Payne points out, citing the Hebrew scholar David Levy, that the word translated a virgin in Isaiah does not signify a virgin in Hebrew, but merely a young woman. Thomas Payne, citing the Hebrew scholar David Levy, the Hebrew word is Alma, which means a young woman of childbearing age. There is a different specific Hebrew word for virgin, Betula, and Isaiah did not use it. The text simply says a young woman is pregnant and is going to have a son, which, in a city full of young pregnant women, is not a miracle. It is a Tuesday. Apologists have a defense. and we should say it out loud of young pregnant women, is not a miracle.
God
It
damn
is a
it.
Tuesday. Pregnant. And is going. The text simply says a young woman is pregnant and is going to have a son, which, in a city full of young pregnant women, is not a miracle. It is a Tuesday. Apologists have a defense, and we should say it out loud. They point out that the old Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible rendered that word as Parthenos, which does mean virgin, and that Matthew was likely reading the Greek. That is fair, but it does not save the prophecy, because even if you grant the word virgin, the chapter still nails the sign to a war in 735, centuries before Jesus, and to a child who must be a toddler within a few years. You can argue about one word. You cannot move the calendar. The sign was for Ahaz, and it was spent in Ahaz's lifetime. Payne's conclusion is that the Christian tradition lifted half a verse out of a war story and turned it into a Christmas card. And he was not gentle about who he blamed. The Christian translators have falsified the original. Thomas Paine, An Examination of the Prophecies. Once Paine had the method, he ran it on every prophecy Matthew claimed, and he did it with a specific man in his sights. After part 2 of The Age of Reason appeared, the Bishop of Lambeth, Richard Watson, published a book-length defense of the Bible to answer him. Paine wrote his examination of the prophecies as a reply to Watson, and all the way through it,
God
he
damn
keeps
it.
turning to taunt the bishop directly, daring him to defend what we are about to look at. So whenever you hear Paine address the bishop, that is who he means. A real, named opponent who tried to answer him, and, in Paine's telling, could not. And the pattern Paine found repeats so reliably that by the end, it stops being shocking, starts being almost funny. Take a verse out of the Old Testament, cut it loose from the sentence around it, glue it onto an event in Jesus' life, call it fulfilled, hope nobody checks. Matthew says the family fled to Egypt so that the prophecy would be fulfilled, namely, out of Egypt I have called my son. Go back to the source, Hosea 11:1, and the very next words are about the same son sacrificing to false gods and burning incense to idols. The son in the original is the nation of Israel, coming out of Egypt centuries earlier. To make it about Jesus, Paine notes, you would have to make Jesus the idolater. The verse only works if you stop reading at exactly the right comma. Matthew sends us to Micah for the prophecy that a ruler will come out of Bethlehem. Read 3 more verses in Micah, and the figure being described is a war leader who drives the Assyrian army out of the land with the sword. Paine's verdict is dry. This is so evidently descriptive of a military chief that it cannot be applied to Christ. It was the Romans who occupied the land when Jesus lived, not the Assyrians. And far from driving them out, Jesus was executed by them. This one is Paine's favorite. Matthew says Jesus settled in Nazareth so that the prophecy would be fulfilled. He shall be called a Nazarene. Paine went looking for that prophecy. So have scholars ever since. It is not there. There is no such passage in all the Old Testament, and I invite the bishop and all the priests in Christendom, including those of America, to produce it. Paine's explanation was that Matthew simply dreamed it. He notes that Matthew keeps having the angel show up in dreams anyway, so why not prophecies too? Matthew says Judas's third piece of silver fulfilled something in the prophet Jeremiah.
Fucking Christ.
The passage he is thinking of is actually in Zechariah 11, 12
Jesus
to 13,
fucking Christ.
not Jeremiah. And the wires are crossed before we even start. In
Jesus goddamn
Zechariah,
fucking
the third
goddamn
pieces are
fucking
called a
goddamn Christ.
handsome price,
The
approved
fucking
and
Christ.
given to the potter in the house of the Lord.
Jesus
In Matthew
fucking
27,
Christ.
3 through 5, they are blood money, condemned, and refused at the temple.
Jesus fucking
Paine
Christ.
calls it what it is. This is the most barefaced piece of imposition.
Jesus fucking
Matthew
Christ.
says the soldiers, dividing Jesus' garments, fulfilled a prophecy. The line is from Psalm 22, where a
Jesus
suffering
goddamn
man is
motherfucking
describing
goddamn Christ.
in the present
Jesus
tense
fucking Christ.
his own enemies
Jesus
appropriating
fucking
his
Christ.
clothes, since he'll soon be dead and won't be needing them. Paine's response cuts the